Of all the bars in the world, he had to walk into mine. Well, it's not really my bar, but I often stop by after work. Plato's Place is my hideout, and I'm well acquainted with Tony, the bartender. I prefer keeping a low profile, so I wasn't thrilled to see him there. His name is Marcus Whitaker. I've known him since high school. We've exchanged greetings in passing several times, but I never had the desire to start a conversation with him. He seems like a decent man, but he's incredibly naive. All through school, he was constantly teased and bullied because they knew he couldn't stand up for himself. I remember once during freshman year, I witnessed him being shoved by 3 seniors. I've always hated bullies, so I foolishly stepped in. I hoped Marcus would back me up, but he ran away like a frightened animal. When he finally returned with a teacher, I was lying on the ground with a bloody nose, swollen lip, and 2 black eyes. While sitting at my favorite bar, wondering if I should leave, Tony placed my beer next to Marcus. Despite wanting to leave, I remembered my mother's lessons about politeness and greeted him with a simple, "Hello, Marcus. How are you?" He turned to me, tears in his eyes. "Alex, hi. I just came in for a beer, that's all. What are you doing here?" "Same as you. Just planning to have a drink before heading home." I didn't want to admit I was a regular. Without thinking, I asked why he looked upset. He didn't answer right away, just stared into his beer. I hoped he hadn't heard me, but eventually he said, "My wife is cheating on me, and I don't know what to do." "Divorce seems like an obvious solution," I replied. "Are you sure, or is it just suspicion?" "Oh no, it really is happening. She's with him at this very moment. They literally kicked me out of my own house to be alone," he said. I exclaimed in disbelief, almost choking on my beer. "You've got to be kidding." I let out a nervous laugh, hoping it was some kind of bad joke. Instead, he just stared into his glass, confirming my worst fears. "Did they kick you out of your own house?" "Seriously?" I asked, feeling a mixture of anger and pity. With a bashful nod, he confirmed my suspicions. "Yeah, it's the same Marcus," I thought to myself, realizing he hadn't changed a bit since school. It was frustrating to see him make the same mistakes repeatedly. I couldn't understand how this could happen. This man clearly needed help, but it shouldn't have to come from me. I made a conscious decision not to interfere this time. "So you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself while your wife is cheating with some jerk in your own house, in your own bed?" Before I could continue, he interrupted. "But what can I do? What is it you want to do?" I asked, suspecting his possible answers. I just shook my head in disbelief. Not only had he not learned from past mistakes, he seemed to have become even worse. "What do you want to do?" I asked again. "I want to throw them both out of the house, but I can't stand up for myself, as you know, Alex. It would be humiliating for my wife to see me beaten up. Besides, I work for Heather's father. If she says the word, I'll be out of a job. Without a wife and a job, what will I have left?" "You'd have something much more important," I replied. He looked puzzled. "What's that?" "Self-respect," I said, becoming increasingly upset about his situation, to the point where I had difficulty controlling my anger. "Do you know what that's like? It's when you're confident in yourself, when you feel good about who you are. Are you feeling good right now? Which is more important to you? Staying with a wife who doesn't love or respect you, working at a job that undermines your self-esteem, or being able to walk down the street with your head held high?" I hoped my fiery speech would spur him into action, but he just sat there motionless. "It's always been easy for you, Alex. People admire you and look up to you. You've never been afraid of anyone. Unlike me, I'm not as brave as you. I admit I'm a coward and always have been. I've never even been in a fight because I've always run away. I doubt I'll suddenly become brave now." My disappointment peaked. What a pathetic man. I stood up, took a $20 bill from my wallet, and tossed it on the bar to cover both our drinks. "Let's go," I almost shouted, grabbing him by the collar and pulling him off the bar stool. Wait, where are we going?" he stuttered as I dragged him toward the door. "To your house. You and I are going to teach someone a lesson," I growled. "Oh, Alex, I don't think so." "Shut up, Marcus. Get in the car and show me where you live." Marcus looked terrified as we drove, and I worried he might do something reckless. Reluctantly, he directed me to his house. "Where's the bedroom?" I asked. "Up the stairs, Down the corridor to the left, he stammered. I grabbed him by the shirt and dragged him along. At the top of the stairs, I saw the bedroom door was wide open. Such dishonorable behavior disgusted me. Still clutching Marcus's shirt, I forcibly pulled him into the bedroom. The couple was so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice us until we were right beside them. Marcus's wife screamed. I grabbed her lover by the hair and pulled him away. Despite my grip, he managed to twist free and tried to punch me in the head, but his movement was limited and the blow landed on my shoulder. Deciding not to give him another chance to strike, I held him firmly while Marcus's wife continued screaming. I quickly spun him around and delivered a powerful blow to his solar plexus. He collapsed to the floor, his trousers lying beside the bed. Taking advantage of the opportunity, I grabbed his wallet from his pocket and checked his license. Then I noticed his phone partially sticking out. "Who is this man, Marcus?" his wife shrieked hysterically. Marcus froze, unable to comprehend the chaos unfolding before him. "Marcus, I swear I'll slap you if you don't do something," I shouted at him. "Shut up," I snapped at her while searching for her lover's wife's number. Finding it marked "Wife," I nervously dialed. "Hello, Mrs. Carter. I'm sorry to break the bad news, but your husband has caused quite a scandal here." Mrs. Carter's voice was full of worry and confusion. "Who is this? Why do you have my husband's phone? Is he all right? What's happening?" Looking at the motionless man, I calmly explained that I was a friend of the man whose wife her husband was having an affair with. I had his phone because I found it in his trousers, which were abandoned in my friend's bedroom. I warned her to keep a close eye on him. If he tried anything with my friend's wife again, I wouldn't hesitate to take harsh measures. Without waiting for an answer, I ended the call. I opened the camera on his phone and quickly photographed Marcus's wife before she could hide under the covers. Then I took another picture of her lover, who was starting to regain his senses. Without hesitation, I sent both photos to Mrs. Carter. The lover looked up in shock when he realized I had his phone. "What have you done?" he begged. "I just sent pictures of you two to your wife," I replied calmly. Despair filled his eyes. "No, please, you can't. I have children. It's too late. The damage is done. You should have thought about the consequences before threatening and kicking a man out of his own house just to sleep with his wife," I hissed as I threw his trousers at him. "Get dressed and leave Marcus's house immediately." He looked at Heather, who was still hiding under the covers, perhaps thinking she still had some power in this situation. "Now," I growled, "and if Marcus finds you with his wife again, I won't be so lenient next time." While he hurriedly dressed, I took a picture of his driver's license with my phone, returned it to his wallet, and threw it back to him. "Here are your things, Mr. Richard Carter from 32, Linden Drive. Remember what I told you about coming back here." Without hesitation, he quickly left the room. I turned to Marcus, who stood beside his bed looking shocked. "It's up to you now, Marcus. I can't decide everything for you. You married her, so now you have to deal with her," I said harshly. "That's it," Marcus's wife screamed. "I'm calling the police." "And what will you tell them?" I replied. "That your husband came home with a friend and found you in bed with another man? Maybe the local newspaper will pick it up for the police report." I can see the headline now. "Grocery store owner's daughter found in love nest." I couldn't believe it when I recognized her. Heather Walker, at least that was her maiden name. She was a year behind us in school. It was hard to believe she was now married to Marcus. Her father owned 2 grocery stores in the area, and she often strutted around them like a queen. "Okay," she replied irritably. "Please leave the room so I can get dressed. Marcus, go with him." I glanced at her timid husband, watching his shoulders droop. He seemed so accustomed to obeying orders that he didn't even realize it. "Marcus, this is your house, your bedroom, and your wife," I reminded him. "I'm going downstairs, but if I were you, I wouldn't follow orders. I'd start giving them." I turned and headed back down the stairs, the echo of her screaming at him still ringing in my ears. I decided to grab a beer from the fridge and wait to see who would emerge victorious from their dispute. It was clear she would win, but I stayed in case he needed to be taken to the hospital. I had no doubt she could manage on her own. Sitting at the kitchen table, I listened to their heated exchange. Heather seemed to be doing most of the talking, but occasionally Marcus's voice rose above hers. I wondered how many times he had raised his voice during their marriage. When I finished my beer, the commotion seemed to have subsided. I half expected her to come down the stairs dragging his lifeless body, but when she finally appeared, she was alone. Her eyes scanned the room until they settled on me, and she started walking in my direction. Her gaze was like a deadly weapon, and I knew I was in trouble. Marcus was probably lying dead upstairs, and now she was coming for me. I hoped I could defend myself. "What did you tell him?" she growled, getting straight to the point. "Nothing special. I just said he had to learn to stand up for himself," I replied. She laughed. "Yes, of course. That will never happen." I continued. I advised him that to regain his self-respect, he should leave his unfaithful wife. She grinned. "Thanks to you, he's already packing. I hope you're happy with yourself." I looked at her confidently. "Yes, I'm quite satisfied." She remarked mockingly, "You think you're smart, but mark my words, he won't be gone long. I give him 3 days at most before he crawls back begging for forgiveness. And when he does, I'll make sure he regrets it. He'll be grateful to you for that." Despite her cocky grin, doubts began creeping into my mind as I considered her words. After all, she probably knew him better than I did. Suddenly, my confidence wavered. At that moment, Marcus appeared at the bottom of the stairs with a suitcase in hand. I saw him in the doorway, but Heather had her back to him. "Are you ready to go?" I asked. Heather turned to face him. "Marcus Whitaker, if you walk out that door, don't expect to come back," she warned. I held my breath, not knowing what he would say. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus finally spoke. "I'm ready, Alex." I left the kitchen and headed for the front door. We were almost outside when we caught the end of her scream. "I'm serious, Marcus. Don't bother coming back." I looked at him and saw the fear in his eyes. "And now what?" he asked, his voice trembling. His question brought to mind Heather's words that he would crawl back to her. I realized I might have just completely ruined this poor guy's life. Even though the situation was already terrible, I knew she could make it worse. Suddenly, I was filled with doubts about whether I'd made the right decision. We returned to Plato's, and I left him by the car. We agreed he would spend the night at a motel. I offered to buy him his first beer the next evening at 7 that night. I barely slept, doubting my decision and regretting getting involved. I promised myself never to do it again. The next day, as usual, I arrived at Plato's around 6. Tony opened a beer for me and set it on the bar. "How was your friend from yesterday?" "He looked pretty depressed," Tony said. I took a sip from my bottle. "He has problems at home," I replied, not wanting to delve into the topic. If Marcus wanted others to know about his personal problems, he could share them himself. But I was interested in Tony's opinion. "Have you ever been involved in other people's family problems?" He gave me a puzzled look. "I'm a bartender. It's part of the job," he replied with a grin. "No, I mean really involved. Yesterday, I played a role in his decision to leave his wife. She treated him badly, and I thought I was helping by pushing him to leave, but now I'm starting to doubt my actions." "What makes you doubt yourself?" Tony asked. I thought for a moment. "I guess I think I went overboard. Thank God she's not my wife," I chuckled. I think it was her self-confidence that made me step in. She was so sure he would come back to her, and if he returned, she vowed to make his life even more miserable. I probably should have stayed out of it from the beginning. "I can say for sure that he's not on his knees right now," Tony said. "Oh," I laughed. "Why are you so sure?" "Bartender's intuition. Besides, he just came in," he replied with a grin. I turned around to confirm, and there he was, smiling. "Hi, Alex." "Hi, Tony. The drinks are on me," he said, still grinning. "Alex, tell me honestly, do you think you could give me some fighting lessons?" "Why all this talk about fighting? Who are you planning to fight?" I asked, perplexed. "No one. I just want to be able to stand up for myself if I have to. I should have kicked that guy out of the house, not you. I want to be ready next time." He explained that I felt uneasy at the thought of a next time. "Are you planning to go back to Heather?" I asked. He met my gaze, and for the first time, I saw determination in his eyes instead of fear. Anger burned in them. "Are you kidding me? After the way she treated me? No way. Never," he said decisively. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe there was more to Marcus than I initially thought. Maybe all he needed was a little push in the right direction. I'm just tired of constantly retreating, he continued. Today I finally defended my position, and it gave me strength. I want to continue in the same spirit. You defended your position? What did you do? Did you tell her off? I asked. Heather? No, I haven't even talked to her. It was the first time I stood up to her father, and he was so surprised that he forgot to fire me, he joked. But the truth is even better. He's not going to let me go. Today he called me into his office at the State Street store where I work. I thought my time was up. First, he mentioned that he'd talked to Heather, and she claimed I had left her. He warned me that she was furious and that I should go home right after work if I knew what was good for me. I felt like a little kid being scolded, ready to respond with a short yes, sir. But I stopped and thought about what you, Alex, would do in this situation. When I met his eyes, he smiled at me encouragingly. I said, I'm sorry, but I can't fulfill this request, sir. She cheated on me repeatedly, and I've reached my limit. His reaction was so violent that I thought he was going to choke on his cigar. Alex, I can't tell you how good it felt to finally stand up to someone, especially my father-in-law. He's the scariest guy I know. After you, of course, he said. His words made me smile. I've never considered myself intimidating. Well done, I replied. When I asked if I would be fired, he said no. He mentioned that he never interferes with the personal lives of his employees. Alex, I think he actually respected me. When I left his office, he looked at me, smiled, and nodded approvingly, as if giving me his consent. That's great, Marcus. It's nice to earn respect, isn't it? Yes, it definitely is. And what's next? Are you really asking me to teach you how to fight? Marcus, I don't think I'm the best person for that. I've had my share of defeats. However, there are many places where you can learn martial arts, schools, self-defense courses, even boxing gyms. If you seriously want to learn, you should turn to a professional. Maybe you're right. He replied that we chatted for another hour, after which he called Tony to pay the bill and left. He seemed to be in high spirits. Maybe he would surprise us and turn out to be a decent guy. Looking at the time, I realized it was time for me to leave. I had plans for the evening with Sarah. Sarah. My soulmate, in a way. We'd been together for 6 months now, my longest relationship to date. She might not be the most stunning girl in town, but her petite figure captivated me. Her sense of humor was a breath of fresh air, a quality I found hard to find in other women. Besides, she was smart and genuinely interested in me. Although I felt a strong connection with her, the word love never entered my vocabulary. I can't say for sure if it's my own limitations or just that the right girl hasn't yet crossed my path, but I've never been able to sincerely express love for any woman. After saying goodbye to Tony, I headed home. I hurried to shower, changed clothes, and arrived at Sarah's door just in time. We planned to have dinner, go to the cinema, and then end the evening with intimacy, either at her place or mine. When she opened the door, I was taken aback. Sarah was dressed in red, a color that always suited her well, but it wasn't just the color that caught me off guard. It was the outfit itself. Before me stood a stunning woman dressed in scarlet. A corset made of red satin clung to her every curve, emphasizing her hourglass figure. The ensemble was completed with red 4-inch heels, which further enhanced her charm. They say when all the blood flows from the brain to other parts of the body, it becomes difficult to think. I stood with my mouth open, not knowing how long I'd been in this state. I vaguely remember her leading me inside, how she delicately unbuttoned my shirt, and then my belt buckle. Well, Alex, it looks like you're glad to see me, she teased at that moment. Gathering all my charm, I replied, come on. Sarah gently led me toward the bedroom, offering to continue in a more comfortable environment. It really was an amazing night. I only met Marcus again the following week. Tony whispered to me as he followed me into the room. Hi, Alex. It had been a whole week since he got out of his difficult situation, but he was still grinning. How are you, Marcus? Are you still enjoying your single life, or has she managed to bring you back? I was waiting for him to tell me they had reconciled, but he caught me off guard again. I've already said, Alex, that I don't intend to go back. I started the divorce process 3 days ago. I think she was handed the documents today. She's been calling my phone continuously every 5 minutes since 11 a.m. I was sure she would show up at the store and make a scene, but she didn't. Are you really determined to go through with this? Are you really going to get a divorce? Yeah, the process may take some time. My lawyer said she could extend it to a year if she wanted to. I hope she just wants to move on and sign the papers. How did you get together in the first place? She always acted like she was better than everyone else. No offense, Marcus, but you didn't really attract much attention. I don't know for sure, he replied thoughtfully. I worked at the store in the summer and after school in my senior year. She came to see me often. At first, she seemed kind. Maybe she was the only girl who ever showed me kindness. Looking back now, I realized she was probably just looking for someone to control, and unfortunately, I was the perfect target. Has she always behaved like this? Bringing other men into your house? No, she only did it for the second time just last week, but I had a feeling she'd been unfaithful all along. She never let me get close to her, always found excuses to go out with her friends, and returned late at night with smeared lipstick. She often had disheveled hair and frequently left her blouse unbuttoned. Whenever I tried to bring up the subject, she would start making a fuss, so I just kept quiet. I knew she wouldn't change her behavior no matter what I said. I just shook my head. How long have you been married? Since the year after graduation, he replied with a shrug. She was the only girl who was kind to me. She didn't even ask if I wanted to get married. She dragged me into a jewelry store, pointed to an engagement ring, and jokingly said that she wanted it. He grinned. And what's next? It looks like you're really going to get a divorce. What are your plans after that? Are you still going to work for her father? I've been thinking about it, he mused. I'm not sure. Heather can easily come to the store and harass me whenever she wants, but I'm not sure what I'll do if I leave. I started out as a warehouse worker, and when I married Heather, Mr. Walker promoted me to manager, but I still feel like I'm just a boy in a warehouse. I've been thinking about starting my own business. I asked if he had any hobbies or skills that could be turned into a profitable venture. At first, he was silent, seemingly considering a possible idea. Then, when he looked around to make sure no one was eavesdropping, it became clear that he had something in mind but didn't dare discuss it. Sighing, he confessed, "This will only confirm what you already think of me. You'll see me as pathetic." I already knew he was timid, so nothing he could say would change my mind. What's the matter, Marcus? Do you collect women's underwear or something? He didn't meet my gaze, instead lowering his head and quickly checking to see if anyone was eavesdropping. Yeah, I make dollhouses, he muttered. I could hardly contain my laughter, but he saw it perfectly. Yes, I know, he admitted. I bet you think I'm weak-willed, but they're actually quite beautiful. I even made one for the neighbor's daughter, and she loves it. For a moment, I wondered how it happened that I was sitting next to a man who allowed his wife to kick him out of the house so she could cheat on him, and at the same time, he built dollhouses. Why have I always found myself in such situations? What's wrong with me? I need to borrow a truck. Do you happen to know anyone who has one? I managed to get into Heather's house while she was out and pick up some of my clothes, but there are tools and other things left in the garage that I need. Unfortunately, I can't afford to rent a truck, as the lawyer took all my money as a prepayment. They're demanding a $300 deposit even for a small truck, which I don't have. I hesitated, wondering if I should continue to help him. In the end, I thought, damn it, why not? Although my father has a pickup truck, he would never let a stranger drive it. I can drive, but I'd rather do it when your wife isn't around, I said. Yeah, me too, he grumbled. Thanks, Alex. That would be very helpful. How about next Tuesday around 7:30? Heather will be at her parents' house. At least that's what she always says she does every Tuesday. I've never checked, but I wouldn't be surprised if she has another boyfriend hidden somewhere. I shook my head again. This man had been humiliated for so long that I couldn't understand how he could even have the courage. Yes, I muttered, trying my best to hide my disdain. I knew I had to ask my father, but I was sure it would work out. When Sarah arrived that weekend with an overnight bag, she stayed until Sunday afternoon. Marcus didn't even cross my mind during that time. It wasn't until Tuesday morning that I remembered I needed to borrow Dad's truck. After work, I went to my parents', picked up the pickup truck, and drove to Plato's to meet Marcus. We drove past his house to check for activity. There was only one light on. But Marcus noted that his future ex always left the kitchen light on when she left. He picked up the garage door remote control and was surprised to find it still working. It seemed like she was still hoping he would return. When the door opened, the headlights illuminated the empty space where Heather's car usually stood. But it wasn't until the overhead light came on that I noticed Marcus had everything he needed to work with wood. The garage was small but perfectly organized and orderly. Turning off the ignition, I got out of the truck to take a closer look. The tools, though light, were of excellent quality. "Wow, Marcus, you're doing great here," I said. "Thank you. I have a passion for this," he replied. When I looked at the shelves above, my eyes darted around. Despite thinking of dollhouses as toys when he mentioned his hobby, what I saw did not match my expectations. They weren't just dollhouses. The miniature structures were executed with a precision that could rival even the most skilled carpenter or cabinet maker. "Did you really make these by hand, Marcus?" I asked admiringly. "Yes, I've always liked making dollhouses," he replied. "You really need to come up with a more appropriate name for them than dollhouses," I said. "They're just amazing." Marcus smiled and thanked me, saying that his wife Heather had teased him for playing with dollhouses. It was nice that someone finally appreciated his work. After loading his tools, we grabbed some thick blankets to protect the dollhouses during transportation. Then we drove to the storage room he'd rented, unloaded everything, and headed to Plato's where his car was parked. I suggested we stop for a drink since it wasn't late yet. He agreed, and we went inside, where 2 cold beers were waiting for us. "I know someone who could help you," I said to Marcus. "My girlfriend Sarah has a bachelor's degree in marketing. Maybe she could help develop a marketing plan for your dollhouses." "Do you really think so?" he asked. "Maybe you can make money selling them," I said. "After all, they are very well crafted." "How long does it take to build one?" "It usually takes a couple of days, maybe 3 for the more difficult ones," he explained. "Well, I wouldn't quit your main job yet," I cautioned. "I'll talk to Sarah this weekend and get her opinion." After finishing our beers, we went home. Marcus was still living in a hotel, but had already mentioned his plans to find a small apartment. I should have praised him for his perseverance. Sarah called me on Thursday. From time to time, she went out for a drink with her friends on Friday night, and the upcoming Friday was one of those evenings. I was a little disappointed since her weekend usually started on Friday night, but it gave me some time to plan a surprise for her. The previous weekend she had surprised me by showing up at my door with a suitcase and spending the entire weekend with me. The week before, she'd met me at her house in stunning red lingerie. I needed to cook something special for Sarah, but since I wouldn't see her until the next day, I decided to stop by Plato's on my way home from work on Friday. "Hey, Tony," I asked, "do you know anyone who has a great recipe for Eggs Benedict? Sarah loves this dish for breakfast, but she's very particular about how she likes it cooked, so she doesn't order it often." "Actually," Tony replied, "I know a great recipe. If you want a delicious breakfast, you should use real Canadian bacon, not ham, to ensure the best taste. The eggs should be perfectly poached so that the yolks remain intact and blend with the hollandaise sauce. To top it all off, add a black olive for an extra splash of flavor." "Tony, you described this recipe so well. Could you write it down for me? I'd be very happy to pay you for your help. Consider it a favor. You help a friend, and I return the favor. It's similar to the concept of paying it forward." The next day, I drove to Sarah's house and double-checked the grocery bags to make sure I had everything I needed. I hesitated before deciding whether to ring the doorbell. I thought that after a night spent with friends, she might not want to wake up early, but at the same time, I didn't want to wait too long and risk missing her. I waited until 8:30 in the morning before pressing the doorbell. After a moment, I noticed the peephole go dark. She was checking who was there. When I stepped inside, the door closed behind me, and I saw my beloved standing there in her underwear. She was yawning, covering her mouth with her hand, and her eyes were half closed. It was an incredible sight. I put the bags on the floor, went up to her, and kissed her. She wrapped her arms around my neck and smiled sleepily. "Why did you take so long?" she whispered. I smiled, realizing what a wonderful woman she was. "Do you want to eat before or after?" I asked. "Before," she said, struggling to wake up. "Okay, why don't you jump in the shower to wake up? and I'll start cooking breakfast," I suggested. "Okay," she replied, yawning again. "What are you cooking?" "Surprise," I replied, grabbing the bags and heading to the kitchen. Following Tony's recipe, I was almost done when Sarah came downstairs, looking more cheerful than before. "What time did you get home?" I asked, placing a plate of perfectly cooked eggs Benedict in front of her. "Oh, they look amazing, darling. I didn't know you were such a gourmet," she remarked. "I hope you like it," I replied, sitting down with my plate and savoring the first bite. She finally answered my question. "I only came in after 2. These eggs are fantastic, Alex. Thank you. Is everything okay? You don't usually come home this late after a night out with the girls." "No, I'm doing well, but unfortunately Nancy is going through a difficult time. She recently found out that her husband was unfaithful, and she's completely heartbroken. We all stayed late to support her and try to cheer her up. I'm sincerely worried about her because it seems that her world has collapsed." "Is this the tall blonde who works in the office next to yours?" I asked. Suddenly she looked up at me and said, "No more questions. I'm not giving away a man who cooks so well for anything or anyone." I couldn't help but smile at her playful remark. I realized she was joking, but it was still nice to hear as we ate breakfast, we discussed her friend. The mention of an unfaithful husband made me think of Marcus and his dollhouses. I needed to ask her something before I forgot. I have a friend who is a master at making wooden dollhouses. He hopes to turn his hobby into a profitable business, and I wanted to know if you had any marketing ideas. "Do I know your friend?" she asked. "I've known him since high school, but we recently reconnected. Like Nancy, he's going through a divorce because his wife has been unfaithful for a long time, and he has reached his limit." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Why are there so many cheating spouses? Why get married if you're going to cheat? I can't understand it." "I know," I said. "For someone who used to be a player, you have surprisingly traditional values. That's one of the things I admire about you." I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled and shrugged. She smiled back. "So he makes wooden dollhouses by hand? How long does it take him to make one?" she asked. "He said it takes 2 to 3 days. With such deadlines, it would be difficult to maintain a wholesale business," she said. "Perhaps retail would be more appropriate." She paused, thinking. "Or he could target a niche market by promoting them as unique products through a broker. This way, he'll get more benefit from them. But first I need to look at some of them." "I wouldn't contact brokers if I didn't understand the situation well," Sarah explained. "No problem," I assured her. "He moved out of his house, but he still has a couple in his storage unit on Dempster." Sarah's face lit up mischievously. "If I help your friend, I'll demand payment for my services," she said. "In return, I'm counting on extra time spent with you." I couldn't help but smile. I've never felt so good about paying back a debt. "Okay," I said. "Let's start right now. Are you planning to stay the night?" "Yes, I have clean clothes in the car," I replied. "That's my man," Sarah chuckled. "Why don't you call your friend and see if we can meet him tomorrow at his storage place? I'd like to see the dollhouses. And let's meet in the bedroom," she added with a seductive smile, leaving the kitchen and heading into the hallway. I quickly grabbed the phone and dialed Marcus's number. We agreed to meet at the storage unit the next day at 2 o'clock. As soon as I finished the conversation, I hurried to the bedroom to pay off my debts. It was another unforgettable night with Sarah. Marcus was anxiously waiting in his car when we pulled up. I introduced him to Sarah, and he opened the storage room. After examining his creations, Sarah reacted the same way I did when I first saw them. "My God, Marcus, did you make these yourself? They're just amazing," she exclaimed. "Thank you. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I started building dollhouses about 5 years ago as a hobby," he replied. "Alex was the one who suggested I sell them." After examining the second model, Sarah stated, "Okay, I've seen enough. How many of these models can you produce in the next 2 to 3 weeks? They should be at the same quality level, no flaws. I'm faced with a problem. There's no electricity here. I need a workplace with electricity. How much space do you need? It doesn't have to be big. An area like this will be enough." Sarah thought for a moment before suggesting, "The apartment complex where I live has garages of similar size with electricity. I rent one for my car, which can be temporarily parked on the street while you set up your workplace. Marcus was overwhelmed with gratitude and couldn't stop thanking her. He didn't seem to have encountered many acts of kindness from others in the past. Realizing this, I jokingly said that I would have to borrow Dad's truck again. The shy Marcus began to show himself again. He hesitantly asked, "Do you mind, Alex?" I calmed him down. "No, not at all. If Sarah trusts you enough to leave her Lexus on the street, then I trust you too." Tears welled up in his eyes, and he struggled to find words. "I don't know how I can thank you both," he finally managed to say. "No one has ever shown me such kindness." After Sarah and I agreed to help move his tools to her garage, we went out to dinner. "This man is so sweet," Sarah said during the drive. "Yes, he's a good guy," I replied. "I just wish he had more courage. He was constantly bullied at school, even by younger children. They did whatever they wanted to him, and he never fought back. His wife kicked him out of his own house to be with her lover, and he just cried and complained about it. I thought he was going to fold, but now he's going through with the divorce. Perhaps I played a role in this decision. I'm proud of him for standing up for himself. Some people don't handle conflict well. Not everyone is as strong as you, Alex," she said with a grin. As a joke, I played Tarzan, beat my chest, and screamed. This made her laugh heartily. "He may not be tough, but his talent speaks for itself," she said. "These dollhouses are really impressive." She paused, carefully considering her next words. "Let's not tell him about this yet. I don't want to get his hopes up if it doesn't work out, but I think I know someone who could help him sell them. Jason Trent, an elite broker specializing in unique things for wealthy people, might be an ideal option for this project." On Tuesday, we moved Marcus's belongings to Sarah's compact garage and arranged his collection. Marcus was as excited as a child on Christmas morning. After that, the three of us went to dinner to celebrate the successful move. We briefly discussed the dollhouses before Sarah changed the subject. "So, Marcus, Alex mentioned that you're going through a divorce," she said sympathetically. "I'm really sorry to hear that. Is there any chance of reconciliation with your wife?" Marcus shook his head. "No, none," he replied. Then Sarah gave her advice. "You know what they say, Marcus? If you fall off a horse, you should immediately get back on it." I wondered what she was getting at. "Do you have someone special waiting for you?" she asked. Marcus was embarrassed and admitted, "No, I've never been able to communicate with women. They don't seem to like me too much. I guess I'm just too shy or something." "That's nonsense," Sarah said. "You're a handsome man. All you have to do is prove yourself and give someone the opportunity to get to know you better." "I have an idea." I felt like Sarah was about to offer something. "There's a girl at work that I think you should meet," she suggested. "Not Nancy," I interjected, interrupting her train of thought. "No, not Nancy. Her husband has returned and is asking for a second chance. I think she's making a mistake by letting him back, but they're attending marriage counseling right now. Bev, Mr. Jensen's secretary, is pretty, smart, pleasant to talk to, and lonely." I looked at Marcus, who looked scared again. Sarah continued to insist on her idea before I could intervene. She offered to arrange a double date with Marcus. I wasn't thrilled at the thought of him joining us, but the invitation had already been made, and I had no choice. Marcus's eyes lit up as soon as he heard this. "A double date with you and Alex? Do you really think she'll like me?" he asked. Sarah was digging us deeper and deeper. "I'm not sure, but there's only one way to find out. How about this? I can check if she's available, and if so, we can arrange to meet this Friday." No wonder he readily accepted the offer. Once again, I scolded myself for meddling in other people's affairs. Since I couldn't come on Friday night, I decided to meet Tony for a beer on Thursday after work. As soon as I sat down at the bar, he wasted no time asking if I had a new girlfriend. I was taken aback by his question. "A new girl?" "No. Why would you think that?" Tony leaned closer and said that every night that week, a woman had come looking for me. After he described her as a woman of medium height with blonde hair and a few extra pounds, it dawned on me that this must be Heather, Marcus's soon-to-be ex-wife. Tony just nodded. "The next time she comes, tell her that you haven't seen me and heard that I was hanging out at some other bar, but you don't know which one. Maybe you should tell her yourself." Tony giggled and added, "She just came in and is standing right behind you." I turned slightly and greeted her. Hi, Heather. She sat down on the bar stool next to me. Hi, Alex, she replied. It took me a while, but I finally figured out who you are. I kind of remember you from school. How did you manage to find me? Before answering, she asked for a glass of white wine. You're quite famous in this city. I was just making inquiries. Okay, so you found me. What do you need, Heather? I want to know what makes you think you have the right to interfere in other people's affairs. We were happily married until you intervened. I couldn't help but grin. You may have been happy with your marriage, but your husband certainly wasn't. I'll ask you a question. Why do you think you can treat him like an empty space? He's my husband. I can treat him as I please. I understand you, but he also has the freedom to leave at any moment, I replied calmly. As she vented her displeasure, her demeanor seemed to soften a little after my answer. Look, Alex, I didn't come here to argue with you. I just want you to tell Marcus that everything is forgiven and he can come home. I know I said hurtful things, but I've changed my mind. I promise to treat him better. I rolled my eyes at her sudden change of mood. Heather, you know he still works at your dad's grocery store, right? If you want him back, go and tell him yourself. I can't do that. My dad won't let me go into the store to talk to him. He's afraid I'll make a scene. He seems to be mad at me. Listen, Heather, Marcus has made it clear that he does not intend to reconcile with you. As you've already said, you've ruined everything. It's time to accept this and move on. I agree that I made a mistake, but he respects your opinion. I just want you to tell him that I deserve a second chance. I promise I will treat him better. No more other men. I'm sorry, Heather, but I doubt your sincerity, and I think Marcus does too. Why should you care? No matter what, you will always be your father's precious daughter. You'll never have to worry about money. There are plenty of men in the world who are ready to do anything to feel the luxury that you live in. She sighed and slumped her shoulders. I miss him. I miss having him by my side. You should have thought about that before you cheated on him, I replied. She looked at me. He wouldn't have left if it wasn't for you. At least could you say something nice about me? You're wrong, Heather. I just made it clear to him that he deserves more. He would have left you anyway. Marcus is finally starting to find himself. Leave him alone, move on, and find someone else to poison their life. The anger in her eyes grew stronger. This is not the end, she hissed. She abruptly finished her wine in one gulp, got up, and left. Tony came up to me, impressed. Wow, you really put her in her place, he remarked. Did you hear everything? I asked. Oh yes, every word. Is she really that terrible? Even worse, I grinned. She was very nice just now. I decided to stay and have a couple of beers with Tony until 10 o'clock and then go home. On Thursday evening, I prefer to go to bed early so that I have enough energy for the weekend. The next evening, we gathered at my house as it was more convenient than meeting at Sarah's. Sarah brought her friend Bev with her, and Marcus arrived shortly after. I made drinks for everyone while we chatted and got to know each other before heading to the restaurant. Although I had seen Bev in Sarah's office several times, I was not familiar with her. Bev turned out to be somewhat reserved, which led Sarah to think that she and Marcus could be a good match. While they were chatting, Bev asked about Marcus's dollhouses, which Sarah had told her about earlier. At first, Marcus did not want to discuss them, fearing that Bev would find him eccentric as others did, but Sarah skillfully pushed him to open up. Soon he was enthusiastically sharing the details of his hobby. Dinner went smoothly, and everyone enjoyed the conversation. Both Marcus and Bev seemed to become more open. Sarah nudged me when she noticed them stealing glances at each other. As a result, we went dancing, and Marcus's not-so-dexterous behavior on the dance floor caused Bev to laugh along with him. The evening went quite well, and we decided to repeat it the following month. Despite Heather's futile attempts to reconcile, Marcus was determined to get a divorce. It was obvious that he was really done with his ex. For the first time since I met him, I noticed subtle changes. He was starting to feel a little more confident. He continued to work for Heather's father during the day and spent his evenings in Sarah's garage building dollhouses, except on Wednesdays when he attended self-defense classes. On Monday evening after work, I went to Plato's, and Tony was shocked to see me there. Has something happened? I've never seen you here on a Monday, he exclaimed. Hi, Tony. I replied with a forced smile. No, I'm just a little upset. I could use a drink and someone to talk to. I sighed. So what's on your mind? He asked. Sarah. I spent the weekend with her, and all she did was talk about Marcus and his amazing wooden doll houses. She even helps him sell them. I'm happy for them, but it just annoys me. At that moment, my phone rang. Glancing at the screen, I noticed Sarah was calling. She's probably calling to apologize, I told Tony before answering. Hi, beautiful. Hi, handsome, Sarah greeted me. She quickly explained that she needed to go out of town with Marcus next weekend to visit Jason in New York. Jason was the broker she had mentioned when I first asked her for help. Marcus has a solid assortment that we want to show. We brought 4 houses in different styles, but we can't pack them safely for a plane flight, so we'll have to drive there and back, Sarah said. Although I didn't understand marketing, I was puzzled as to why they had to travel all the way to New York to find someone to sell these things. But I couldn't argue with her experience and enthusiasm, especially since I was the one who suggested bringing Sarah in to help. Maybe we could arrange to meet one evening this week, I suggested. It's hard to say for sure now. I'm in talks with Jason about Marcus's broker services, and we still need to resolve the accommodation for the trip to New York. I have a lot to do, so I can't promise anything yet. I was beginning to regret dragging Sarah into all this. Maybe I'll call you on Wednesday after work. I think that's not bad, but I can't give any guarantees, she replied. I see, I said in a frustrated voice. Sarah didn't seem to notice the hint of annoyance in my tone, or maybe she just decided to ignore it. After exchanging goodbyes, I ended the conversation. Tony, who was standing nearby polishing glasses, heard the disappointing news. Sarah was planning to go to New York for the weekend. Tony tried to defuse the situation by suggesting a possible date with his friend, a charming blonde. I just laughed at his attempt to distract me. Sarah and I, without saying it outright, had made an unspoken agreement since our 3rd date. Since then, we had been exclusive to each other, and this fact calmed me down and gave me confidence. Thanks, Tony, but I think I'll decline. I can spend one weekend on my own. But I'll make a deal with you. If you catch me poking my nose into others' business again, please don't forget to give me a good kick in the ass so that I learn my lesson. Tony giggled and looked at me thoughtfully before agreeing. It sounds like a great plan. I promise to keep you in line. Wednesday was a hard day at work, and to make matters worse, Sarah wasn't answering her phone. By the time I got home, I was in a terrible mood. But when I got to the door of my apartment, I was pleasantly surprised to see the seductive Sarah leaning against the door with a white bag in her hands. I brought Chinese food, she said with a smile. She was like a guiding light in a dark and foggy night. I immediately embraced her, and our lips met in a passionate kiss. Our meeting was unusually intense, like never before, and in the end, we both ran out of strength. Gathering our energy, we went to the kitchen table and had dinner together. I wanted her to stay longer, but she said it was time for her to leave. Before leaving, I reminded her to drive carefully. I didn't get to Plato's until 9:30 p.m. on Friday, having no other plans. I worked late into the evening. I knew that Sarah and Marcus had been driving for several hours, and I felt annoyed that she hadn't called to say goodbye before leaving. At about 11 o'clock, I was about to leave when the phone rang. I was curious who could be calling at such a late hour. Hello, beautiful. Are you there already? I asked Sarah. Hello, dear. No, we won't arrive in New York until about 6 o'clock in the morning. I started driving, but Marcus got behind the wheel about an hour ago, so I could rest. We just passed Youngstown, Ohio. Before I was going to get some sleep, I wanted to call you to chat about something interesting, she said with a grin. I could hear her laughing on the other end of the line. I just wanted to offer you phone sex, and Marcus blushed like a tomato, she said, still giggling. Don't worry, Marcus. I'm just kidding, she reassured him. Tell him to cover his ears if he's shy. Wait, he's driving. Forget about it, I joked. I just wanted to find out how things were going before the weekend got crazy. I probably won't have time to chat with you until next week. Hey, baby, I want to wish you and Marcus good luck. Drive carefully and call me when you can. We ended our conversation with a few phone kisses. Tony caught part of my conversation and added, You should definitely marry this girl, Alex. She looks like a real keeper. I replied, If I were one of those who get married, I probably would have proposed to her a few months ago. I guess I'm just one of those guys with a commitment phobia that everyone talks about. I left some money on the counter and went home. For the first time in months, I found myself in bed before midnight on a Friday night. I was determined to rest. That it wasn't until the following Monday evening that I heard from her again. "Hello, handsome," she greeted me. "Hi, how are you doing? How did it go?" I asked. She replied, "Jason keeps his cards close to his chest, but this is typical when he negotiates the commission structure. But it seems that he really liked the dollhouses. He said he would let us know by the end of the week." "That's great, honey. I've got my fingers crossed for your deal. I wanted to call you and tell you that we got there, but the long drive exhausted me. I'm going to go to bed early because I have to work tomorrow," she said wearily. I could hear the fatigue in her voice. "Okay, baby. I'm glad you called. I would have been worried if you hadn't." After saying goodbye, I hung up the phone. Although it was still early for me to go to bed, I decided to grab a beer from the fridge and relax in my lounge chair. Tony's words kept ringing in my head. "You have to marry this girl." This thought surprised me, but I couldn't get rid of it. I've witnessed too many of my friends end up in failed marriages. For example, my friend Jack tied the knot with his high school sweetheart, and 3 years later discovered that she was cheating on him. Furious, Jack tracked down the man she was cheating with in a bar across town. A fight ensued, resulting in Jack being hospitalized for 3 weeks. He was beaten not only by the man, but also by his friends who joined in. Additionally, Jack's ex-wife received most of their property in the divorce. These days, mentioning his ex-wife's name is like walking on thin ice. He despises her and still harbors thoughts of revenge. With so many uncertainties, the idea of marriage seems too risky. Nevertheless, I don't mind asking Sarah to move in with me. With that thought in mind, I finished my beer and went to bed. On Thursday, having not heard from her, I decided to call her to discuss plans for the weekend. "Alex, I was just going to call you," she exclaimed excitedly on the phone, her voice sounding younger than usual. "Guess what? I don't know, but it's probably something very good," I grumbled. "Oh, it's more than just good, it's fantastic. Jason has not only agreed to represent Marcus's interests, but has already sold 2 of his houses. Isn't that amazing?" Admittedly, this was good news, especially after the long trip to meet him. I tried my best to match Sarah's excitement. "This is wonderful, dear. You should both be proud. You've done a fantastic job," I said, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. "Have you thought about anything interesting this weekend? Maybe we could celebrate your success in a special way." "I already have plans," she replied. "We meet at Plato's at 7 o'clock. Then Marcus invites us to dinner and then to dancing." "Oh, Alex, we have to dress decently. Not necessarily a suit. You can just wear a sports jacket." "A sports jacket?" I asked. "Yes, he said we'd go to some nice place for dinner." "Okay," I muttered to myself. "I guess I can put up with Marcus for a couple of hours." When I entered Plato's on Friday evening, Tony greeted me with a nod, indicating that Marcus was already inside. I glanced toward the booths and saw that Marcus was inviting me to join him, accompanied by Bev. Sarah had her back to me, which annoyed me a little. I've always had a strange habit of not sitting with my back to the door. Well, I thought to myself, I can be patient for a while. As I headed for the booth, I couldn't help but notice how often I've been saying this lately. "Hello, beautiful." I greeted Sarah, sitting down next to her and wrapping my arm around her. I bent down to kiss her. "I've missed you," she whispered. "Try to prove it," I replied. "Later," she promised. Marcus couldn't wait to share the news. "Alex, did Melanie tell you the good news?" "Melanie?" I asked, using her full name, which was unusual. I looked at her questioningly. "Yes," she replied. "On the way to New York, he asked me what Sarah meant." Marcus added, "I think Melanie is a beautiful name, and I asked if she would mind if I called her that." I told him no, as long as he was okay with me calling him Mark. Sarah said that I couldn't help but laugh at the situation. "All right, so we'll use your full name but shorten his?" I replied jokingly. As I glanced up, I noticed Marcus looking toward the bar for the 2nd or 3rd time. "Is everything okay?" I inquired. "No," he answered, not sounding very convincing. Bev also picked up on his behavior. "Do you know them?" she asked, motioning toward the direction Marcus was looking. I turned my head to see who she was referring to. A man and a woman were seated at the bar, with the man looking somewhat familiar, though he was blocking my view of the woman. Didn't he go to school with us? I asked. Yes, Marcus replied. He was a year ahead of us. He came in with Heather just as you sat down. Heather? I inquired. Yes. You probably can't see her, but she's sitting on the other side of him, Marcus explained. I noticed the man glancing over at us and chuckling. When Heather leaned forward and looked in our direction while laughing, it became clear that it was indeed her. They were making it obvious that Marcus was the cause of their amusement. Should I ask Tony to kick them out? I asked. No, I really don't care who she's sleeping with right now. I just thought she had better taste than him, was the reply. Tony was busy and didn't notice when the two of them started approaching our table. I was about to get up, but Marcus said he'd handle it. When they came to our table, I stayed ready just in case. They were both standing next to Marcus and looking down at him. Marcus, Pete said, pronouncing the name the same way he did at school. Some people just don't want to grow up. Heather looked at Bev and asked, Who is she? Another one of your fans, or client number 304? Before anyone could respond, Bev blurted back, No, Heather. I already stole your husband. I wouldn't want to steal your clients either. Heather's expression was priceless, which gave Pete the perfect opportunity to confront Marcus. Marcus, your friend should apologize to my girlfriend for her rude words. Bending down, he grabbed Marcus by the shirt, demanding that he apologize. Marcus jerked his hand away with a quick movement, causing Pete to fall to his knees in pain. Before Pete could react, Marcus was on top of him, exerting enough pressure to cause screams as if his arm had been broken. Heather, stunned, was on the verge of attacking Marcus when Tony intervened, stopping her. What's going on here? Shouted Tony. I explained to him what was really happening. I'm bringing him up to speed. This jerk came with Marcus's ex, trying to cause trouble, but Marcus seems to have everything under control, Tony. Marcus released Pete's hand so Tony could lead them to the exit. Come on, both of you. I'll say this politely just once. I want you to leave, and I don't want to see any of you here again, Tony stated firmly. I watched Tony lead them away, and when they reached the bar, Heather looked back at us with tears in her eyes. At that moment, it dawned on me that, in her twisted way, she really cared about Marcus. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Tony kicked them out, but then surprised us by giving us a free round. I was really amazed by his generosity. I knew Marcus was practicing self-defense, but seeing it in action was impressive. He thanked Tony for the drink and apologized to all of us. While we were enjoying the free drinks, it got late. Marcus didn't explain where we were going for dinner, just told us to follow him. After a while, we arrived at Chez Paul's, the most elite and exclusive restaurant within a 50-mile radius. See, I knew you'd need that sports jacket, Sarah said with a smile when the valet opened her door. I quickly grabbed my jacket, put it on, and followed her into the restaurant. Marcus was beaming when he checked in with the maitre d'. We were seated at a table, and Marcus received a wine list. He handed it to me, admitting his inexperience in this matter and asking me to help him choose a good bottle. Despite feeling uncomfortable with the possible high prices, I realized that I would most likely end up paying the bill when the evening ended. We unanimously agreed that Chez Paul's lived up to its reputation. The waiter discreetly placed the bill in a small black leather folder next to Marcus, making me feel anxious for him. After calculating the cost of the wine and dessert, I realized that the bill would likely be about $350. Without thinking twice, I offered to contribute, but before I could, he took 4 fresh $100 bills from his wallet and put them in the folder, telling the waiter to keep the change. Once again, I was amazed by his generosity. After dinner, we decided to continue the evening at Spigot's, a stylish dance club known for attracting skilled dancers. Although I was confident in my dancing abilities, I couldn't help but worry about Marcus. After we were seated at a table and ordered drinks, I plucked up the courage and asked Sarah to dance. As we walked to the dance floor, I heard Marcus ask Bev to dance with him too. While Sarah and I were dancing, I noticed that she was looking at Marcus and Bev with a slight laugh. I followed her gaze and saw Marcus effortlessly twirling Bev around the dance floor. It was another surprise for me that evening. Sarah noticed my reaction and casually remarked, I gave him some dancing lessons. I couldn't resist answering. Looks like he was a good student. As the evening progressed, our focus shifted from dancing to table conversations. Marcus shared his plans to leave his job and devote himself to creating dollhouses full-time. I was happy for him, but also felt he was rushing and risking financial instability. I wanted to express my view and gently suggested, Marcus, of course I admire your passion, but don't you think this broker might not be able to make enough sales? Maybe you should reconsider your decision to quit your job, at least for now. I was shocked by Sarah's unexpected support for his plans, as she was usually rational and balanced. Alex, Jason's orders are already coming in, she told me. Okay, but you mentioned that you can only produce 3 pieces a week, right? And according to Sarah, this guy takes a significant portion of the profits. Marcus's expression turned serious as he looked at Sarah. I didn't tell him everything, she admitted. Then Marcus turned back to me, clearly gathering his thoughts. He works as a broker, selling things to the wealthiest people in the world. He recently sold 2 dollhouses to a Middle Eastern sheik who owns numerous oil wells. The sheik bought dollhouses for his 2 daughters, paying $20,000 for each. As I took a sip from my beer, the mere mention of the price shocked me. In surprise, I even let some beer spray through my nose, forming a ridiculous mixture of beer and mucus. Sarah gave me a quick pat on the back as I reached for a napkin to clean myself up. With a note of amusement in her voice, she asked, Are you okay? I kept coughing, unable to respond with anything but a nod. The situation was awkward. All eyes were on me. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. As I blew my nose and cleaned up, thoughts of $20,000 dollhouses constantly spun in my head. When I returned to the table, I noticed that the waitress had cleaned up while I was gone. I apologized as I sat back down. I'm sorry, Alex. I should have been more gentle about the amount. I knew you weren't aware of how much they were worth, Marcus said. No, don't worry, I reassured him. I've already received orders for 4 more pieces, but I need to create special shipping containers for each to ensure they're well protected during shipment abroad. I'm working on that now. Jason handles the orders, and I deliver directly to the customer before shipping. I receive payment by bank transfer. Melanie organized all this. She's really impressive, he said, looking at her gratefully. I always knew my girlfriend was a master of her craft, but I never fully realized how talented she was, I replied. While we were chatting, I realized it had been over a week since Sarah and I had been intimate. It dawned on me that she must want this as much as I did, so we decided to call it a night and go home. I assumed Marcus and Bev would be doing the same, getting ready to enjoy the rest of the night. I felt proud of everyone involved. This evening was just incredible. Whether it was the satisfaction of a job well done or a thirst for intimacy, it didn't matter. The night seemed to fly by like a flash. Sarah loved cuddling after intimacy, and I also felt that I enjoyed it, especially with her. As we lay there, Marcus's words popped into my mind. $20,000, I muttered softly. Sarah giggled and nodded her head. Yes, $20,000, but Jason will get 50% of that amount, she clarified. 50% for being just a middleman? I exclaimed in disbelief. He's not just a middleman, Alex. He and several other people are legends in my business. They are the James Bonds of marketing, working with a very exclusive clientele. I first met him at a conference downtown a couple of years ago. We instantly found common ground, and I ended up spending the whole night with him, Sarah explained. Suddenly, my whole body tensed up. Sarah realized this and looked at me. I must have looked visibly worried because she immediately understood my thoughts. No, I didn't sleep with him in New York, she reassured me. I spent 2 nights with him at a conference more than 2 years ago, before I met you. I haven't seen him since until last week, and our meeting was purely business. She clarified, Jason usually works for the buyer. When a Maharaja wants a new yacht or a private jet, he contacts Jason, tells him all the details and requirements, and Jason finds the perfect option. He earns up to $1 million on a single sale. Why does he bother with dollhouses that cost $20,000 if he earns so much on large deals? He focuses on dollhouses because big projects don't come around often. His clients always demand the highest quality, and are ready to pay top dollar. Once word of these dollhouses spreads, he will have a steady stream of orders. He can sell hundreds, even thousands, before his customers move on to the next trend. Marcus will be fabulously rich thanks to your idea. What about you? You still don't understand anything, I said. I wasn't going to take anything. I'm helping him for you. But Marcus insists that we both get a small percentage of the company. He wants to give me 10 shares and you too, but this remains between us. He wants to tell you personally. Shares? Does he already have a company with shares? Yes, we needed to find a way to protect his assets from his ex before the divorce was finalized. We consulted with Jason, and he told us what to do. We created a corporation and officially registered it in Delaware, which is known for its more lenient corporate rules compared to other states, Sarah continued. Then the corporation issued 200 shares, which are currently registered in my name. But when Marcus's divorce is finalized, I'll transfer most of the shares to him, except for 10 which he'll leave to me. Looks like you were both very busy, I remarked. Yes, we've been incredibly busy. I haven't even had a chance to contact you. Our schedule was packed morning to evening, she said. I think I'll give up my share of the shares. Please tell him to add my shares to yours, because you're the one who really deserves them. You'll need to tell Marcus that yourself, dear. He was very insistent on rewarding you for everything you've done for him, she explained. In the end, Marcus met me at Plato's a few nights later, and after a few minutes of talking, he agreed with me, although he was very unhappy. We agreed that from now on, he would always buy me a beer. Marcus called Tony over and generously announced that all the drinks were now on his account. Quickly, he ordered another round for both of us. After taking a sip of beer, he turned the conversation to a new topic. Can you imagine if Heather really came to the motel to apologize for that night? To be honest, I'm not too surprised. She looked remorseful when Tony kicked them out that night. What did she say? Marcus explained. Apparently, she had a serious conversation with her father. It seems that he found out about the incident and was extremely upset. She said he expressed his disappointment in her, and it was a blow that undoubtedly hurt. He holds an important place in her heart. He seems to have opened her eyes to her behavior towards others, including me, he remarked with a sigh. She's in tears begging for forgiveness. I've never seen this before. Will you give her another chance? I asked. No, it's too late. Too much has happened between us, he replied. Hardly anyone can change so quickly and completely. I always expected the old Heather to reappear. Every time she left the house, I wondered if she was dating another man. He mused, taking another sip of his beer. No, but maybe she will show respect to her future husband. Months passed, and everything went on as usual. Heather was a thing of the past. The divorce was finalized, and she no longer had anything to do with Marcus's thriving business. Money flowed freely. Marcus and Sarah reaped the benefits, and as for me, I had a stable job, a new car, and a cozy apartment. These were the things that mattered to me, and I worked hard to achieve them. If I wanted something else, I knew that I would have to work for it myself. Nevertheless, I appreciated the occasional free beer. Then Sarah called me. She was worried and insisted that we needed to talk, but didn't want to reveal the reason over the phone. I arranged to meet her after work at Plato's. Arriving a few minutes early, I had already ordered 2 beers when she came in. I moved over to make room for her next to me, but she chose to sit on the opposite side of the booth. Hi. She smiled nervously, reaching for her beer bottle. Hi. I replied, not knowing whether to return the smile. A feeling of anxiety began to creep into my soul. Sarah couldn't seem to meet my gaze, twisting her napkin convulsively as she spoke. Alex, there are no easy ways, I heard her say when I was deep in thought, trying to figure out the situation. Marcus's unexpected appearance took me by surprise, and I didn't even notice him until he was next to us. Sarah and I turned to look at him at the same time, but Sarah's tone was slightly annoyed as she addressed him. What are you doing here? I said I'd deal with it, Marcus replied confidently. When Sarah moved over to make room for Marcus, I felt that something was wrong. Sarah should have been sitting next to me, not him. It didn't take me long to figure out what was going to happen, that I couldn't help myself. Anger seeped into my voice. Are you both betraying me? I growled. Marcus jumped up hurriedly, trying to calm me down. No, Alex. We would never do that to you. But we discussed something. Alex, we want to see what happens between us next, Sarah said. My gaze shifted to her. Alex, you're a wonderful person. You really are. But it's clear that it's hard for you to come to terms with the idea of a serious relationship. Despite the fact that we have spent many unforgettable moments together over the past year, we have not developed as a couple. I want more. I need a partner who will fully devote himself to me, someone who will always be by my side. I dream of a family, children, and a house with a white fence. Alex, I want all of this, she continued. As I listened to these words, my anger continued to grow. I turned back to Marcus and asked him, "What about Bev? Didn't you have a relationship? Are you really going to end your relationship with her just like that?" Alex, she's dating 2 other guys. It's clear that she doesn't have any real feelings for me. When I tried to end the relationship with her, she just replied, "Okay." And that was the end of it. Marcus explained that I sat in disbelief, unable to comprehend what I had just heard. Alex, I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. Marcus and I didn't have any intimacy. We kissed for the first time only last night. But we spend a lot of time together at work and realize that we have a lot in common. We both want the same thing in life, and I appreciate our friendship, Sarah said. I feel the same way, Alex, Marcus chimed in. I hope this doesn't change our friendship. I've never liked to think carefully about all the points of a situation before I act. I tend to act impulsively, following my instincts at crucial moments, and now all I saw was that the friend I supported and my girlfriend had betrayed me. It felt like cheating, and it hurt. I wish you both all the best in your future together, I muttered bitterly, getting up from my seat. I threw a 10 on the table and said, I'll pay for my own drinks. I continued with all the malice I could muster. Don't you dare call me your friend anymore. Don't give me a helping hand. Don't come to my place from now on. I don't want to have anything to do with any of you. And Marcus, if you even try to contact me or approach me, no matter how cool you think you are, I swear I will beat the hell out of you. I'm serious. Alex, wait, please. Sarah shouted when I was already leaving. I didn't even pay attention to Tony, who called my name when I left. Unable to answer him, I just had to leave. Tears filled my eyes as I drove home, a feeling I had never felt before because of a woman. Stop crying. I scolded myself. She's just another woman. Once at home, I hurried to get a cold beer from the fridge. The pain I felt was overwhelming. As I took a few sips of beer, my mind was engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions. I wasn't sure if it was worth fighting for her. I wondered if I should go back and confess my love. Did I really love her? I was sure I enjoyed being close to her, but is that synonymous with love? It must be, considering the pain I was in. But if I really loved her, could I fulfill her wishes? That was the main question, and to be honest, I wasn't sure of the answer. After 2 more beers and a steady stream of unanswered questions, I eventually fell asleep in my chair, despite the fact that I had to work the next day. On Friday, I decided to do something unusual. It had been years since I last went camping, but I threw my tent and trusty fishing rod into the trunk of my car and hit the road. Some might call me weird for preferring solitude to company when I feel bad, but that's how I handle it. Instead of drowning my sorrows in beer, I prefer the peace and quiet of nature. I found a serene place along the Vermilion River, set up camp, and even managed to catch dinner. Because of the heat, it was difficult to sleep in a tent, so that night I decided to settle in a hammock. Being surrounded by nature helped me take a fresh look at things. Leaning back with my hands behind my head, I stared at the night sky. The stars were shining brightly, and a chorus of crickets sang their love songs. The gentle ripples of the azure waters added peace to the night. At this point, I finally found the answer to my question. Did I really love Sarah? I had to be honest with myself. The truth was, I didn't love her the way she deserved to be loved. If I loved her, I would have been by her side and fought for our relationship to be strong. But deep down, I knew she was right. It felt like cheating, especially considering that I was the one who brought them together from the very beginning. The loss of a girlfriend can be an impetus for deep introspection. It made me realize that my perspective on relationships was changing. The idea of settling down and getting married no longer scared me. Sarah was the closest thing to falling in love, and it made me believe that there was someone in the world for me, someone worth fighting for, someone I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Almost 2 months had passed when I finally visited Plato's again. I don't know exactly why I took so long. Maybe I just didn't want to go back to where everything went wrong. When Tony saw me at the door, his expression was one of surprise. "Wow, you're still alive," he exclaimed, putting a glass of beer in front of me. "I'd already stopped waiting for you to come back," he confessed. "No, I'm still holding on. I just haven't been very sociable lately, I guess," I replied. "I can understand that," Tony nodded. "I would be upset too in your situation. Melanie cried her eyes out after you left that night." I knew Tony was trying to comfort me, but his words didn't make me feel any better. "No, that's not true. She was right, Tony. Sarah wants a home life, and she knew I'd never be able to give it to her. We had such a good time together that it's hard to part with it," I confessed. I noticed Tony smile. "I knew you'd change your mind," he said. "She's been here a few times since then." "Really?" I asked. "Yeah, they're still together as far as I know. She asked me if I thought you'd ever forgive her." "And what did you tell her?" "It must have been a shock to talk to you. I know you must have felt cheated, especially by Marcus. But I told her that in time, when the pain subsides, you will be able to look at the situation intelligently and understand that they did not want to hurt you." I also reminded her of what she already knew, that you were a tough guy, and I believed that in time you would forgive them and maybe even become friends again. I must admit, when you stopped coming, I started to worry that maybe I had misjudged you. "You're a smart guy, Tony. I just needed to be alone to think about it. I wasn't ready to share my feelings with anyone, not even you. If I see Melanie again, can I tell her that you've forgiven her?" "I know it will mean a lot to her," Tony asked. I thought for a moment before finally answering him. The thought of leaving her in suspense flashed through my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. "Of course," I replied to him. He grinned back, confirming my decision. "You're a decent guy, Alex," he remarked. He seemed quite satisfied with our previous conversation about Sarah and Marcus, because now he leaned closer, resting his chin on the bar. "Since we haven't seen each other for a very long time, who are you spending the nights with now?" I grinned at his restrained manner. "No one, Tony. Absolutely no one. But I need to come out into the light again. My self-isolation is coming to an end today," I said and banged my fist on the bar. By the end of the next week, I went on a date with Charlene, a sweet girl I met at the grocery store. However, it turned out that I didn't like it. She just wanted to talk, even in intimate moments. Behind Charlene came Sandy, Michelle, and Eva, and then there was Carol, who had an insatiable appetite. She visited me 3 or 4 times a week, driving me to exhaustion, after which I felt completely drained. But how can you be exhausted? It had been 7 months since the night Sarah and Marcus talked about their relationship. I was sitting on my usual bar stool, listening to Tony's dreams that one day he would become the owner of the bar, when suddenly he fell silent, staring somewhere behind me. I turned to see what had caught his attention. He was no longer slouching, his posture radiating confidence rather than arrogance as he took a seat next to me. I was still looking at Marcus uncertainly while he was talking to me. I sat in silence, considering my next steps. "I saw your car in the parking lot when I was passing through," he mentioned. "I'm glad for you," I replied, looking straight ahead. "Melanie said you forgave her. I guess it doesn't concern me, does it?" I was still silent. "I love her, Alex, and she loves me," he continued that I remained silent. "I'm really sorry, Alex. Truly, I'm sorry. It was me. Well, I wish it was someone else because I know you care about her, but would you marry her? Were you ready to spend your whole life with her, start a family, and build a house together? I guess we'll never know, right?" I spat, feeling like a jerk, but at the moment, I didn't care. Of course, I knew that eventually I would have to wish them a happy life together, but now I needed to vent my emotions. I heard him sigh. "When Melanie said that you were ready for forgiveness, I hoped that this also applied to me. You're the only real friend I've ever had. We're getting married next May," he said, taking something out of his wallet. "I've left my number on a business card," he said, putting the card on the bar. "I know that my request may seem impertinent, but I hope that you will agree to become my best man." His request took me by surprise. Looking into his eyes, I noticed that tears welled up in them. I hope that in time you will find the strength in your heart to forgive me, Alex. With that, he headed for the door, wiping away his tears as he went. Tony was silent, not taking his eyes off me. Do you think I should do this? I asked. It's not for me to decide, he replied. You know, part of me almost wishes they'd gone behind my back and betrayed me. Then at least I would have a reason to be offended. But no, they acted nobly and turned to me before taking any action. Yeah, Tony said. I picked up the business card. I'll think about it, okay? Tony smiled knowingly. But I know one thing for sure. I know I've said this countless times, but I'm talking about it now more than ever. I will never interfere in other people's business again. Just as I was about to finish my thought, a woman's voice suddenly pierced the air, demanding that someone let her go. I turned around and saw a woman desperately trying to free herself from a man who was holding her wrist tightly. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't get free. Without thinking, I shouted, "Hey," and hurried to them, demanding that he let her go. The photos really interested me. Surprisingly, I didn't look so bad in a formal suit. Therefore, it's not surprising that in the end, I agreed to be Marcus's best man. Marcus was visibly nervous during the wedding. When I got to give my speech, now you're probably wondering what happened that night at Plato's. Even though I vowed never to get involved in situations like this again, I couldn't just stand by when I saw a man abusing a woman. Her name was Rita, and it turned out that this man was her abusive boyfriend. Finally, she reached her limit and decided to kick him out, but he forcefully grabbed her wrist and threatened to take her home to harm her. He was very brave when it came to hurting women, but Tony and I weren't going to let him get away with it. Together, we escorted him out the door. As he left for his car, he vowed to take revenge on Rita. When we returned, we saw that Rita was trembling with fear. Tony hurried to get her some water, and I tried to calm her down. She was sure that he would return to her apartment and cause chaos, especially since he had a key and free access to come and go as he pleased. It made her feel insecure. I contacted the police and tried to describe the situation to them, but they started interrogating me aggressively. They asked if he was a legitimate tenant and if he had physically harmed her. They asked if there were visible injuries or previous reports of violence. Disappointed, I decided to end the conversation and turn to another person for help, Marcus. Marcus arrived at Rita's apartment, and when we entered, we heard a man prowling in the bedroom. Rita stayed in the living room while Marcus and I confronted him as he viciously slashed her clothes with a knife. As we approached him, he suddenly pointed the blade at us. Without hesitation, Marcus quickly performed a move as if he were a martial arts expert. Marcus easily turned the attacker over and disarmed him, almost breaking his wrist in the process. I couldn't help but admire Marcus's skill and mentally wanted to know what courses he had been taking. Rita quickly collected several garbage bags, into which we stuffed the attacker's belongings, and Marcus took the apartment key from his keyring. After giving him a strict warning, we sent him on his way, telling him never to return. Despite the resolution of the situation, the stress turned out to be too much for the red-haired beauty. She broke down and confessed that she was still afraid of his return. Having no funds for a motel room, I kindly offered her my spare bedroom until she got back on her feet. Almost a year later, she still lives with me. I want to clarify that after several months spent in the guest room, she moved her clothes to my bedroom. For the first time in my life, I realized that every night I fall asleep thinking about the woman who captured my heart. It was a feeling I had never experienced before, and I knew I was in love. I was finally ready to take the next step in our relationship. While rushing to get the engagement ring I had been saving up for so long, I couldn't even believe that I was really going to propose. Everything was planned perfectly. After a romantic dinner at our favorite restaurant on Saturday evening, we would go for a walk along the lakeshore under the light of the full moon. There, I would get down on one knee and ask her to spend the rest of her life with me. I'm sure she'll say yes. Marcus has already agreed to be my best man. In addition, I recently learned from a mutual friend that he plans to give Rita and me 5 shares of his company as a wedding gift. This time, I will not refuse such a generous act.